Okay, welcome everyone. I'm not going to do introductions because I've got 10 pages of notes. So I'm just going to dive right in. So this is a report on the retreat that Ayya Ahimsa and I just completed with a woman called Beth Upton. And the retreat was organized, it was in Quebec. Beth is originally from England and is currently trying to set up a meditation community in Spain. So she was a nun for 10 years. She trained in Pa Auk, which is a village and then the name of a monastery plus the name of the head monk in Myanmar. She's been disrobed, I'm not too sure how many years, maybe 5, not positive about that. And it's interesting, she said the reason, she loved being a nun, the reason she disrobed is she felt that the things that she had gained or realized or the habit energy she had changed or whatever were fragile. So it's like having an anger problem and going off to a cave to meditate and not feeling angry anymore and thinking, oh, I'm not angry anymore. But that's because you're in a cave and not coming up against the world. And so she felt she wanted to make these changes that she had developed sort of more robust. So it's an interesting comment because most monastics I've taught to, they're saying like living in a monastery is just like living out in the world because you've got all these different personalities and people, train as monks and nuns in order to transform themselves. So they don't come in there with perfect personalities, right? They come in there with their unique issues. And so people are rubbing up against each other. And so usually most monastics feel that they have enough opportunities within the monastery to make their changes more robust. But anyway, that was what she said. And then the other interesting thing that she mentioned is, whoops, can everybody turn on their mute? I don't know who's, I just muted you, Manik. There we go. She has a boyfriend, and it's a fellow that she's had a relationship off and on for 20 years or something. So they were in relationship at times before she became a nun. And then there was a 10-year gap when she was a nun. Anyway, they're back together. And for him and his community of friends, like she said, they sort of see me as kind of like a loser, like she doesn't have a job that's paid because she's a teacher and it's all by donation. So she doesn't have a salaried job and they're not Buddhists. And so they don't have the understanding of what it is that she does. So when she's teaching a retreat, people are just in awe of her, her teaching abilities. She's just amazing. So there she gets, if you want to say her ego stoked, but when she's with her boyfriend and their group of friends, her ego does not get stroked at all. So she said it's a very good way to help letting go of this sense of I, or this sense of ego. Anyway, so that's Beth. Let me see what else I have in here. Anyway, she's super passionate about teaching, and I'm so happy because she's just such a wonderful teacher. She trained at Pa Auk, as I said, in Myanmar, and she was there for about 5 years, and then she moved around to different places for the next 5 years of her of being a nun. But after her 5 years of training there, her teacher, she was a very good student and had developed a lot of things, and her teachers felt that she was ready to teach herself, but she felt very shy about that. So when she was in Spain and trying to set up a little community of meditation, she was living in a cave. I think, I don't know what the county is. It's next to Granada, Elmira or something. There's a whole bunch of caves in the hills there that sort of free to live in. So she was in one of the caves, and I think there were some other people as well. Although she did do a solitary retreat under a tree for about 4 or 5 months that she said she just had some really amazing experiences during that time. Anyway, a lot of the caves were populated with drug addicts and drug dealers. And one of these fellows he told her he'd been an addict for 60 years. So I don't know how old he was. I hope he was like at least 75. I hope he was at least 15 before he started. But anyway, he'd been a drug addict for 60 years. And he said anything out there that had a name, he'd used. And anyway, one day or night or something, there was a terrible fight. I don't know if it was over drugs or something, and he got kind of injured. And I think he decided to quit. After 60 years, he decided to quit. And I think he must have asked her to teach him, and she did. And this fellow, let's just say, I don't know how old he was, but let's just say he was 75 years old, never meditated. She got him up to the 7th jhana. Like, so age 75. So this says there's hope for us oldies. So anyway, she realized after supporting this fellow that she had the ability to teach. And so she's been teaching since then, and very passionate. So we're all very grateful that she's passionate about teaching. So the routine at this retreat was we get up and we'd start our morning meditation at 6 a.m. And that went for almost an hour, but she'd stop it just before the hour and she'd read us a sutta and then give a few comments on it. And then at 7 o'clock, we'd have breakfast. At 8 o'clock, she had a group Q&A. And this Q&A was specific for your meditation practice. So it wasn't general questions. It was like, what was happening to your meditation practice right now? Because we were getting individual interviews with her every second day, but she wanted us to have teaching every day if we needed it. Mm-hmm. And so when it was your day off from your individual interview with her, in this group Q&A, you could say, oh, well, now this has happened to my meditation practice. Now what do I do? So she was really dedicated to giving a ton of feedback to people. It was amazing. Then at 9 o'clock were chores, 11 o'clock was lunch, 1 o'clock was another group meditation. So there were just 2 meditations that were required for us all to be together. And that was because if there was an announcement or something, we were all in one place. They could make the announcement. So otherwise you could just, meditate at your own, where you wanted and when you wanted, how you wanted, like if you wanted to do walking or sitting or whatever. And then after that, that's when she started her group interviews. There were 40 of us, so she did half of us each day, so 20 people. So that was 5 hours. So considering she was doing 5 hours of individual and then 2 hours of the group interview and then 2 question and answer periods, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. So that was 9 hours with us. And then she was going and doing international Zooms because she supports people all over the place. So this lady was working. 5 o'clock was a snack. And then 8 o'clock was a group metta. So during the day in one of the rooms, they had a sheet and you would just write down the names of people that you wanted to send metta to. And then in the evening, and this would be like 2 or 3 pages, both sides, that she would read. And then we would have a 10 or 15 minute meditation, just sort of radiating metta. And then the evening Q&A, it could be about your practice, but it was more for just sort of general Dhamma questions, which said you can ask me anything you want. So, I mean, you know, people were asking her very personal questions, and then lots of Dhamma questions, philosophical questions, and she's a bright woman. She answered everything. Like, anyway, very impressive. Mid-30s, I'd say. 20, well, she was ordained at 23. And she was a nun so to 33. And then I don't know how many years she's been disrobed. Yeah. So now what really impressed me and what was so different about this retreat is she focused on a different area of the gradual training. So the gradual training is, first, we develop generosity and kindness. Then there's the morality. We make sure that we're behaving in a moral way. And then it's overcoming the gross hindrances. You know, greed, aversion, hatred, things that, you know, all of the hindrances. Then this is where the meditation practice comes into play, where we're going to deal with the subtle, you know, what the little bits of the hindrances that are left over, and develop the jhana. And then when you come out of the jhana, then you do vipassana, which is insight. Well, she had such a strong emphasis on developing the jhanas and doing insight practice. I mean, she was still working. I mean, people at the retreat, there was lots of people that were, you know, still working with hindrances, but there were a ton of people that were working through the jhanas, and two people were working on vipassana. And so what was so great about this, she was teaching the way she was taught at Pa Auk, which is in a group. I mean, you had your individual interview, but then this group one, you got to hear like wherever people were. So when people were more advanced than you, like, it was really inspiring, you know, hearing people getting instruction to go through, you know, higher jhana states, and then the vipassana trainings. Like, and I've never been exposed to that, you know, just certainly the last retreat I did with, just before the pandemic happened with Ajahn Sona was a jhana retreat. But he was sort of doing like inspiring Dhamma talks, sort of like cheerleading you on, which is what you need to do up to the first jhana, you know, to get you into the jhanas. But then I've never had instruction from there on. And there was a ton of that in this retreat. That's what made it so different and then so inspiring. And then what was interesting, at the end, we had an hour for this morning Q&A. And at the end, we do mudita practice, like being happy for the happiness of others, to counteract people feeling envious of people who were more advanced than you. So that was very good. And then she gave me a vocabulary. I've been trying to say to the group for years, the 2 ways that you can use the Buddhist training. And she gave some beautiful words for it. She said, you can use the Buddhist training to manage suffering or to eliminate suffering. So the managing suffering is mostly what householders are doing, because you're still involved in the sensory world. And so you're using the teachings to manage suffering, to decrease it to a certain extent. But if you're renouncing the sensory world, and either are a monastic or a lay person almost living like a monastic, then you can go through the levels of awakening and eliminate suffering. Although I must say, no problem, you can readily go into the first level of awakening, which is, you know, more an insight that the path is, this is a real path, and what the Buddha taught is real, and a sense of no self. But the big hindrances of greed and wanting, desire, and then aversion, negativity, anger, that isn't touched until the second level. It's decreased at the second level and eliminated at the third level. So at the third level, you're going to have no interest in the household life. But the first level, no problem. There was one participant there who had a 5-year-old child, husband. She was a professional chef, and she had first level of awakening. It was a sotapanna, a stream enter. And I'm assuming the teacher was, but I mean, she didn't speak about it, but just from how she can teach, I'm assuming that's where she was. So no problem staying in the sensory world and being a stream enter. So that's what I hope for all of us. And Ayya Ahimsa and I have after being at this retreat, we have a real passion about wanting to sort of share that with the group and support the whole group to move in that direction. So we'll see. We'll talk more about this when Ayya Ahimsa gets here. So some basic things. You need to have a balance in your practice between urgency and contentment. I mean, you're not going to do the practice if you're not having some sense of, who knows how long I'm going to be alive. I better practice now. I could get run over by a bus tomorrow or have a heart attack or who knows what. So I better practice. So that's a sense of urgency. But when we're practicing, we have to have a sense of contentment. We can't be sort of, leaning into the future, or the practice doesn't move anywhere. So it's that balanced effort. And then when you're actually doing, say, if you're doing breath meditation, the most important thing there is loving your breath, because you're just in the present moment. You're just with your breath. And the precursor to jhana is happiness. So you got to love that breath. Enjoy it, not longing for your breath to be any other way than it is, and not longing for anything to happen, anything else to be happening. Just whatever breath it is, loving it and being with it. Keeping yourself in beginner's mind, which means there's no expectations, and you're not comparing yourself with previous meditations. You're not sitting there and breathing and going, oh, this is going better than yesterday, or oh, this is rotten compared to last week, or whatever. You're just with your breath at this moment and loving it. And then keep it simple. Stay with the breath. And she was saying this a lot for people who were having they close their eyes, try and be with their breath, and they were just having all kinds of fantasies and images and stuff, and they were talking about them. You say, go back to the breath. Keep it simple. If you get caught up, if you realize you're being caught up in fantasies and fantastic images and stuff, just back to the breath. Keep it simple. Now it's interesting. She talked about Majjhima Nikaya 19, which is called Two Kinds of Thoughts. The Buddha, I think this was before he was awakened, he said he divided his thoughts into two kinds, like the wholesome and the unwholesome. And I think I misunderstood the purpose of that sutta. I thought, yeah, we find out what, which are our unwholesome thoughts, and we make an effort to let them go or to replace them. But I thought it was encouraging us to intensify or increase the wholesome thoughts. But Beth, she read this sutta as being a precursor to doing our samadhi, our stillness practice, our breath practice, to get us into jhanas. And with jhanas, we don't want any kind of thoughts. So if there's an unwholesome thought, yes, you let it go or replace it. A wholesome thought isn't so disturbing, so you don't have to make so much effort with it, but you just sort of note, oh, that thought's there, but you're not doing anything to encourage it. or to have it increase or intensify, because you're moving towards stillness. Okay, so now I'm just going to share with you the instructions that I got in my individual interviews. So mostly, I hardly got any instructions. My interviews were just a couple of minutes long because I was in this, you know, my where I was in the gradual training was, I'd sort of dampened down all the gross hindrances, so I didn't have that to work with. So now I was in the space between the hindrances are settled down and then the jhana. So I'm in this, you know, no man's land in between. And she said, this is a place where it's extremely variable how long it takes you. Like once you've got your hindrances settled, and then when you come into jhanas, that's a very variable length of time. Once you have your first jhana, then it really goes fast from there. But this is the indeterminate space. And all a teacher can do is sort of like cheerlead you. So that's what they go in. I just say what was happening, and she'd say, good going, keep going. So it's just kind of cheerleading, but no really specific instructions, except for a couple I'll share with you. So this is kind of like I was saying with the retreat, jhana retreat I went with Ajahn Sona. He was, you know, each day he'd give a Dhamma talk that was an inspiring one, because it was that was sort of like cheerleading, like giving you an inspiring talk to get you to just keep going. So she said this phase that I was in, you know, she said it's like driving, it's driving from one city to another. So first of all, when you're getting out of the city, there's all kinds of turns and curves and things. And then you get onto the highway, and then there's not much happening. But you're making a lot of progress because you go fast, like in the city with all your dips and turns and stuff, it's slow going. But then once you're on the highway, it's fast. So she was trying to encourage me by saying, you're making progress, even though there's no sign. you can't tell. But that was the encouragement that she was giving me. So that when you're in the city and making your dips and turns, all kinds of things sort of happen. When you're first developing the quieting of your mind, you get a lot of perceptual distortions. And like for me, it was mostly with the breath, like I'd feel my sort of self leaning forward, because instead of my breath being here at my nose, it was getting further and further away. And I was sort of like leaning forward to keep attention to it. But I mean, it wasn't out there. That was just a perceptual distortion. So you just have to wake up and realize, oh, perceptual distortion, and just bring your attention. Oh yeah, the breath's still here. Or another one is it would drop down, or the in-breath would be here and the out-breath would be lower. But you just have to recognize them as distortions and just stay at your spot. And then of course there's the lights.
You're charging.
Oh, am I gonna die? No, thank you. It's downstairs in the kitchen. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, we're getting the, if we disappear, we're going to be back in a second. Kelly's running to get the plug in. Thank you.
To the rescue. You are observant. Whoa.
Okay, we're good. So the other thing that happens is lights. You know, and these will be like, you know, bright dots or colored things like lava lamp things, moving, coming and going. You really have to ignore these because they're sort of a sign that your mind is quieting down, but they're very fickle. Like they may not be there when you're really concentrated, then they can come when your mind's won. And so she said, just don't worry about the moving lights. what we're interested in is when the lights are steady. You have just a steady light, and it doesn't have to be bright. It can be a bit dim. She said with time it'll brighten, but you need some kind of a steady, stable, non-moving area of light for 3 days before you start paying attention to it. I think the most I got was 2 minutes, but and so I focused on it, and she says, no, 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 no. It has to be there, steady, stable for 3 days. So I never, that's anyway, so I never made it into jhanas, and I didn't even get to the stable nimitta stage. Okay. Now, sometimes when I would first sit down to meditate, it was hard to sort of capture my mind. It would be wandering around. So she said, because the breath can be quite subtle at the nose, then scan your body and find out where the breath is more coarse. For me, it was sort of like my bottom of my rib cage going in and out. So she said, focus on the coarse area until your mind sort of is being focused on the breath, and then you can go. They like you in this method that she's teaching. You want unity, not diversity. If you're going to go into jhanas, you need unity. And so if you're, see what I was doing, I started with my nose, and then at a certain point in my practice, I sort of moved to whole body breathing, kind of like the aura of your body going in and out. I was focusing on that, but apparently that's too much diversity. So you're just being on a very small part, just where the breath is going in and out. So if you're wandering, go to a coarser breath area for a while and then come to the nose. If you're having some sloth and torpor, then she said, use metta for the first 10 minutes, sort of to brighten your mind. And she said, also use metta if you find that you're straining, because using too much, she said, metta doesn't take effort and it'll brighten the heart. She likened the effort that you're using to be with your breath to like holding a tissue, like holding a Kleenex. So very gentle. And if your mind wanders, it's just like picking up, it's like the Kleenex falling and you just pick it up. So just very, very gentle effort. So not, if you find yourself straining, sort of back off. So what I've been practicing is just sort of like letting the breath come to me instead of going out and trying to find the breath, just sitting back, kind of being the canvas, and the breath is the paint, coming onto the canvas. If you just have murmurings, like when I first started to meditate, the thoughts in my head were like shouting very loud. And then after I'd been meditating for a while, they sort of went down to this underground little murmur. So she said, if that's happening and you're able to stay with the breath, don't worry about it. Just ignore that. If you're being pulled away with wandering thoughts, but they're not strong, and you can just come right back, then just come right back. But if what you're being pulled away with is really intense, then some kind of a hindrance, then you have to pay attention to the hindrance to let it go or replace it. Okay. Yeah, one of the reasons I found myself kind of like leaning in to try and find the breath is because the breath can get so subtle, so it's like, do I feel it? Do I not feel it? But even if you're not feeling it, there's sort of a knowing. There's a knowing you're breathing. So she said, it doesn't matter whether you're feeling it or just knowing it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's crispy clear, how you're experiencing the breath, because you just don't want any tension. So just the fact that it's the breath, that's fine. And at a certain point, you you lose the differentiation between in and out. I remember I could, at times, I would sort of feel the very beginning, just the first snippet of the in-breath, and then I'd feel nothing until the next snippet of the next in-breath. And it was funny for a while there, I felt like I was breathing out, but I couldn't sense it. So then my mind thought, I'm kind of blowing up like a balloon because it's not coming out. So I can't remember, I had to just do a little brain thing. And yeah, just to reassure myself the breath is going out. Okay, going back to this loving of the breath, she said, even if it's a crummy breath, remind yourself it's keeping you alive. And so she said, find something nice about it. Yeah, so important to be in the present moment and content with the breath. Now, I asked her a question about this. She had said that happiness, sukha, is the precursor to jhana. And she said, you don't have to be riotously happy with your breath, because I just had this, my breath was pleasant to me, but there was no like fireworks or anything going off. And she says, doesn't matter as long as it's pleasant, as long as it's not unpleasant or neutral. So you need to be above neutral. But it doesn't have to be fireworks or, real rah. It can just be very, just that it's pleasant. And she said that was good enough. Near the end of the retreat, I had this feeling of nibbida is the feeling of disenchantment. Like all the times that my mind had wandered. It was like I was sick and tired of blah, 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 blah. Didn't want any more of this. And but I said, even though I have this feeling, they're still happening. Like, why is that? And she said, well, having this feeling of dispassion or disenchantment for something is like taking your foot off the gas. It still takes time for the car to come to a stop. So it'll go on for a while. And then I also asked her about, like usually when I'm lying in bed and trying to fall asleep, I try and meditate. And I sort of had the thought, well, maybe I should be doing something different than my main meditation object, because maybe I shouldn't be associating my meditation object with falling asleep. But so I asked her about it and she said, no, use your main meditation object unless you're having defilements, there's hindrances up. Then she said, use metta. So in the group, the 40 of us, most people were working on breath meditation. One person was doing the water kasina. If I have time, I'll talk to you about that. And 2 people had already mastered all the jhanas and they were working on vipassana. They were pretty amazing. And one person was doing the 32 parts of the body as this meditation object. And the teacher had given him that because he was having such fantasies, like when he would try and focus on his breath, he was having such fantasies. She thought he needed to be grounded. So she gave him the meditation on the parts of the body to get him to be grounded. And then I learned something interesting here. The word revulsion is the English translation the Bhikkhu Bodhi gives for the word nibbida, which is disenchantment, and also for the word asubha, like the not beautiful, because the 32 parts of the body is meant to be an asubha or not beautiful meditation object. And so I always assumed that this meant aversion. And she went, no aversion. She said, revulsion is seeing the negative aspects of samsara and embracing them, welcoming them. She said it's a form of metta practice. It's acceptance of reality. If we don't accept it, we're rejecting half of samsara, accepting only the warm, fuzzy parts. So, yeah, still trying to get my head around that, yeah, but I guess the way I think about it is if you have a baby and you're changing a poopy diaper, you don't have a feeling of aversion. You know, it's like not the most pleasant thing in the world, but you know, you love your baby. So, you know, so there's no aversion there. You can see this is not a great thing, but the minus the aversion. So yeah, so I still have to work with getting that as a clear thing in my mind. Okay, to keep you with the breath, she suggested counting, and it's interesting, the very first retreat I did with Ajahn Sona about 20 years ago, that was one of the things he said. He said, right away, he said, your first breath, just count like on the out breath, one, on the next breath, two. He said, otherwise you're going to lose it. Your mind's going to run off and be somewhere else. And so counting is a very skillful means to help you at the beginning of the meditation to get your breath, you know, to get yourself focused on your breath. And again, they're not suggesting you count a large number, maybe up to 8, and then start back at 1 again. And you just do this until your mind stays, you know, is staying with the breath, and then you can let it go. Or she said you can do a transition. You can stop the counting and you can put in a little word like peace or contented or love or something like that. You could just say that on the out breath as sort of a interim thing, and then drop it when you're being steady, and just stay with the breath without any words in your head. Now, back to this indeterminate period between once you've sort of settled down the hindrances, and then when are you going to go into first jhana? She said the problem with how meditation has been brought to the West is, you know, we have 1-week retreats or 1-month retreats. And when she was training at Pa Auk, and they had a lot of lay people coming through and doing retreats there too, she said it took around 3 months, at least 3 months, for people to get into jhanas. So she's saying that our meditation periods are just too short. So if you're able to do a 3-month retreat somewhere, that's ideal. But I mean, we don't have to be totally discouraged, because she's been teaching in Hungary for, I can't remember if it was 4 or 6 years. And a whole bunch of the people there are already doing the vipassana practices. And they're just, I'm assuming they're 1-month retreats. And so it is possible, but definitely having a longer period of time in retreat is usually, you know, often what's needed. I did ask her, you know, what are the conditions? She said it's not like once you go back to your home after a 1-month retreat or a 1-week retreat or something. And she said it's not so much how many hours you're putting in every day meditating. It's like, can you be consistently with your breath, like without wandering? And how much renunciation do you have in your life? So probably the more renounce, the easier it is. What are we doing? 15 minutes. We're on page 5. 10. Another thing is, she talked to us at the retreat, very important to stay with the breath in between sittings. So she said, whatever maybe this is more in a retreat setting, but you can certainly try and do this as much as possible in household life. But she said, move at a pace, whether you're brushing your teeth or, walking somewhere or doing the dishes or something, whatever it is that you're doing, do it at a pace that allows you to stay connected with your breath, to be aware of it. So I had, my most difficulty was when I was changing things I was doing. I'd sort of lose the plot and lose my breath. And then once I was in the new activity, like walking or whatever, then I go, oh, my breath, and go back to it. So I'm thinking like this little insight vibration timer that I use, you can set it on a variable sort of vibration thing. So I'm thinking of, I couldn't do it there because I couldn't remember how to do it. So I'll get the instructions and do that and just wear it on my belt or whatever, so that I'll get this. Thich Nhat Hanh called it the mindfulness bell, just little reminders. Oh, am I with my breath every time it vibrates? And she said, as your practice deepens, it's even more important to be continuously aware of the breath while you're sitting and while you're doing anything else in life. Now, going back to the idea of the hindrances, if you'd like a list, and when I post this, I'll put the link in for this. The Upakalisa Sutta, which is Majjhima Nikaya 128, it lists all the hindrances. Like, we're familiar with the 5, but this one lists a huge long list of hindrances. So if you're interested in finding out what you have to work on, you can go to this sutta and find out all the things you should be letting go of. Okay, nimittas. So now this is the interesting part. And I only can tell you what people asked questions about and what the answer was. And so I didn't get the full picture, because obviously in the Q&A period, people were also having their individual interviews. So these were sort of follow-up questions to the teacher. But this is, anyway, so this is what I gleaned from listening to all these questions in that period. So for the people that had developed the stable nimitta, then the way you work at that is you make a determination to stay with, so once that nimitta is stable, and you want to have the nimitta in the same location as where you're watching the breath, so that, here's your breath and here's the nimitta, so that once it's stable for those 3 days, you're going to switch your attention. And so it's just very close. You don't have to really move. You're just going from here to here or whatever. You switch your attention, but you make a determination. That's adhitthana, a determination to focus on the nimitta for 15 minutes. And then when you come back to your breath, you just let me see here. So once you're back at your breath, you ask yourself how stable, while you were there for the 15 minutes with your nimitta, your light. The nimitta means sign, and it's the light, the luminosity. How stable was it? Sometimes it will fade, and that's just because it's like our breath. If we watch our breath, it, feel like it goes away for a while. It's just becoming more subtle, and the brain hasn't caught up. The brain doesn't have the subtlety to match the subtlety of the breath. So it's the same thing with the nimitta. The nimitta can fade. So she said, just keep your attention there, and then your brain should catch up with it, and then you'll see it again in a more subtle form. Or if you don't, just then go back to your breath. So once you're going in for 15 minutes. You're switching your attention to the nimitta for 15 minutes, and you come back to your breath and you review, was it stable? Once it's stable, then you make a determination to stay with your nimitta for half an hour. And then for 3 seconds, you just focus on your heart and notice, is there light there? And then you come back to the nimitta. And then after another half hour, what you're going to do is every half hour, you're going to review one of the jhana factors for the first jhana. So that's Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, and Ekaggata. So Vitakka is lifting your mind to your breath. So like when your mind wanders and you're bringing it to your breath, that's Vitakka. When you stay with your breath, that's Vichara. And then Piti is joy, Sukha is happiness, and Ekaggata is just being in one place, just with one thing. And so every half hour, so I have to ask her, are you doing this over different sittings, or are you sitting it takes what, 3 hours to do this, because you got 6 factors to look at. So I'll have to ask her the next time I talk with her. But so you're just reviewing, are the jhana factors there? Because when your nimitta is stable, this is called access concentration. And so the factors of jhana are there. They're just not quite balanced enough or strong enough to drop you into jhana. So this is the way you're sort of working with them when you just have the nimitta phase. Anyway, once jhana happens, and that happens because, your senses shut down because you're so focused on your breath and you haven't been paying attention to any of your sensory awareness. Then you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking shut down temporarily, and you're just with a pure mind experience. So once that jhana happens, then you come out and then you review those five jhana factors. Were they there? And she said it's so important when you have a jhana experience to review the factors, because that tells you which jhana you're in, because there's 8. And so which one were you in? So you come out and you review which factors were there, and then that lets you know where you were at. And she said you can't go on how it feels, because the first jhana will feel one way when that's the only jhana you've experienced. But once you've experienced other jhanas, then you come back to the first jhana, it feels different. Okay, so once your mind has learned how to drop into jhana, then you're going to start learning how to master it. So you're going to make these determinations for how long to be in, and you're just going to play with it. You're going to say, I want to be in for 17 minutes, or I want to be in for 31 minutes, or whatever. So you make these determinations. And then when you come out, you check the factors, and then you look at your clock to see how long were you in, how long were you in there? And you just keep playing with that until you have mastery. And this is important because there's the potential to be in jhana for up to, I think, 10 days. So if you've got to go to work, or, have appointments, or, whatever, you have to have some mastery where you say, I need to come out at this time, because, there's life events to attend to. Now, probably for just learning how to do this, you're not going to be in there for 10 days. But anyway, it's important. It's important to have mastery, and it's important for I think for using it for the vipassana. I'm not clear on what the connection is, but she made a comment on that it was important for further stages. So before you make any attempts to move on to the second jhana, you're making all these determinations, playing with the time. And plus, she wanted people for a couple of times to have been in the first jhana for 2 hours. So first of all, having mastery of all these different time periods of going in and coming out, and then having the ability to stay in for 2 hours at a time, and doing that a couple of times. And then you move on to the next jhana. And the way you do that is when you come out and you review those 5 factors, you're going to notice that the first 2, Vitakka and Vichara, they feel coarser than the last three, because the last three are the factors that are present in the second jhana. And so you notice that these feel coarser, so you make a determination to let them go. And then you make a determination to go in. Yeah, I don't know if I've got it written down here. But anyway, determination to go into the first jhana for a certain period of time, and then into the second jhana for a short period of time. And then you come out and you review, were there 5 factors there or 3 factors there? So if there were 3, then you did it. If not, you just keep trying. You keep making the determination. And once you've made your determination, like, I'd like to let go of vitaka vichara, then you drop it. You make that, this is what I'd like to do, and then you drop it. And then you just focus on the nimitta and go into whatever jhana you're going to go into. You're not trying to like be tense and force anything, because then that kills everything. So it's just focus. Anyway, we just have a couple of minutes left, so I think we're going to make this a 2-part series, because I still have quite a few pages to go. So how about I'll take a couple of questions and we'll have a bigger question period next week. Yes.
You just mentioned something, people entering some kind of stream.
Yeah, the stream enters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when the Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree, he had this big aha, like awakening experience. And awakening isn't just one moment, it's 4 different moments that can be years apart, or they can follow each other successively. So the first sort of awakening moment is called entering the stream. And that's a good determination for all of us to have, because once you've entered the stream, you can never be born below human realm. So you can never end up in the ghost realm, the animal realm, or the hell realms. You'll be in the human realm or a heavenly realm for a rebirth. Never can fall below. So that's sort of very nice. And it also, once you've entered the stream, it's a maximum of 7 lifetimes before you have full awakening. And the lifetime that you enter the stream is counted as number 1. So once you die from this lifetime, then it's maximum of 6 more rebirths. It can be way less, but I mean, it can be none or whatever, up to 7, but maximum of 7. Yeah, so it's first level of awakening. And each level, like if you think of a hot air balloon being tied down to the earth by 10 ropes, that's the 10 fetters. So we have 10 fetters that sort of tie us to samsara. And I think it's 3 that are cut off at the root when you enter the stream. And then second level of awakening, 2 of them are weakened. That's greed and aversion. At the 3rd level, those 2 are totally cut off at the root, so that can't arise in you anymore. And then the 5th level is that slight whiff of a sense of self. Even though you know there is no self, like intellectually you know it, there's still that whiff that goes, and then hankering for existence in the human realm or the heavenly realms, that goes. And then there's a couple of others, I can't remember what they are. So all of the fetters are cut by then. Yes.
What do you feel is your biggest lesson in insight into your practice?
Well, I think it just, I sat there and watched tons of people progress from nothing to having nimittas, to being in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th jhana, like in front of my eyes. And then one of the ladies working on vipassana, developing a couple of the psychic powers, it was just so inspiring. All I can say is it was inspiring. So just inspires you to keep going. And And this style, like I've never seen this style of teaching. Now, who knows, because I'm not at a jhanic level, maybe all the students that are, when they've gone into the back room with Ajahn Sona, you know, for their private interview, maybe he's done the same thing that she has. I don't know. So I'm just so grateful for this group interview, because then you got sort of a peephole into what's possible, you know. And then the fact that this one lady who went from no nimitta all the way up to the fifth jhana, she was close. Well, I mean, I don't know how old she was. She was a grandmother, at least. You know, she'd been meditating for 32 years, and that happened for her. You know, the fact that Beth's first student, you know, was a drug addict for 60 years and must have been, who knows, around 75. I don't know when you start using drugs. Say it was 75, and he made it to 7th jhana, you know, with her teaching. So it's sort of like, I feel with the support of this teacher that we can really progress. I'm just feeling inspired that we can, you know, there's hope for all of us, even us old guys. and that there's a method. And Beth said that, she said, if you're just told to sit down and follow your breath, you'll eventually get there. But she said her experience with how she was taught at Pa Auk is that you can just help people move so much more rapidly. So yeah, so Ayya Ahimsa and I are just really, you know, sort of fired up about trying to bring back to our group here, you know, what Beth taught. And we have the support of her. Like, you can go to her site. She does group interviews right now. They're Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m., I think, on Zoom. And then you can do individuals with her, individual Zooms, like, and I'll talk more about that next time, because we're at 9 o'clock. But yeah, so you know, I'm probably not going to do anything different. I'm just really inspired, I guess I would say. Yeah. Pardon me? You know, I haven't really explored. So you'd have to see. She didn't give any Dhamma talks per se. Like, she would read from the sutta, like the word of the Buddha, just read it out of the Pali Canon, and then just make a couple of comments about it. It was really practice oriented, really practice oriented, and practice oriented from the jhanas and vipassana, because most of the Dhamma talks that we give here, they're focused more at dealing with these hindrances, which are extremely important, because we can't get to this, you know, the jhana practice until we've dealt with the gross aspects of the hindrances. Any questions from those of you on the Zoom room here before we shut down and continue next week? And you're all little, I can't see, so you'll have to unmute yourself and just speak out loud if you have a question, because you're all teeny weeny. Okay, looks like no questions.
Is it 9 o'clock?
It's 9 o'clock. 9:02. Okay. Okay, so now I can't even think about how we do our ending. How do we do our ending? I've been gone for 6 weeks.
One of the 4 Brahmaviharas.
Oh, right. We do one of the 4 Brahmaviharas. Thank you. So which day of the, are we on number 4 or 5? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, we're on number 5. Okay. We get to do the special one. Oh, here it is. Okay. So we're just going to end here. So we're going to end with a guided meditation on letting go. This is what we do when we have a fifth Tuesday or a fifth Friday. Breathing in, I see the need I have to control my life. Breathing out, I let go of the need to control my life. Breathing in, I see that control is an illusion. Breathing out, I relax in my inability to control. Breathing in, I see how critical I am of myself. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be critical. Breathing in, I see all the goodness in me. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge of the goodness in me. Breathing in, I see the many ambitions I have for myself. Breathing out, I let go of the many ambitions I have for myself. Breathing in, I see that I am sufficient in all ways. Breathing out, I relax in knowing that I am sufficient in all ways. Breathing in, I see that I crave many things. Breathing out, I let go of the need to crave many things. Breathing in, I see that I have enough. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge that I have enough. Breathing in, I see that I am too busy. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be too busy. Breathing in, I want a less hectic life. Breathing out, I relax in the quiet of this moment. Breathing in, I see that letting go can make me free. Breathing out, I am free. Breathing in, I see that by being free, I can be happy. Breathing out, I am happy. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Blair, please. Tracy's brother. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone. To be continued next week, and then the week after that, Ayya Ahimsa will be here. So this is perfect. It'll bring us up to her.
Thank
So
you.
good to have you.
Okay, good night.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I had nightmares, I killed all your pots.